I guess we'll get started. I want to welcome you all to the St. Thomas Poetry Series reading today. We're welcoming two readers. Jesse Keith Butler has come from Ottawa, and Don Martin has come from London, Ontario. Thank you for coming, and also the people who are tuning in from here and there. I know there are people in the US, and I'm sure there are people in Canada, and I have a special hello to a friend of mine by the name of Anthony in Farnham in Surrey, England, who's watching, so he said to wave discreetly, but I haven't been discreet. I want to start with just a few thank yous to the people behind the scenes. Riggs and Toot and Luping Zhao are the people involved with the live stream. The promotion has been a combination of Julie Armstrong, our local communications guru, and Agnes Cherhati, herself a publisher, incidentally. The book table is overseen by Don McLeod, and the receptions by Margot Swiss and Pat Kennedy. The program was prepared by Christine Cover, but she took her name off it, so I'm putting it back on, so to speak. We're going to start, first of all, with Jesse, who his wife and two sons are here as well, which is very nice. Born in the Yukon, and going back there next year as writer-in-residence at Burton House in Dawson City. He lives in Ottawa. He has a PhD in education and has published a book last year, which he's going to read from, plus he's going to probably read from some new poems he's written since then. And there's a number of publications in periodicals that are mentioned in here. And of course, he has a website that you can get more information about him from. So without further ado, let me welcome Jesse Butler.
Thank you, David. How's the sound in the back? Can you hear me okay? Great. So yeah, my name is Jesse Keith Butler. I'll read from my book shortly, but I want to read some newer stuff first. So to start us off, who here has heard of St. Brendan the Navigator? Most of you, that's great. For those of you who haven't, he was a 6th century Irish monk, but he's called the Navigator because there are various medieval accounts of him sailing across the ocean in search of paradise and having wacky adventures along the way. So I've done a translation of a medieval version of the Voyage of St. Brendan, and I'll read a passage of that shortly. But first I want to read an original poem about St. Brendan. So this is Talking St. Brendan Blues, and it was first published in Trace's Journal. On the feast day of St. Brendan, I was standing on the shoulder of Highway 1 outside of Winnipeg, the last upholder of former rights of access to the common thoroughfare. Or that's how I explained it to myself. I waited there, my thumb jabbed out to catch a ride. Around me swells of prairie waved golden out into the morning, amber tides that carry on westward to the Rocky Mountains, eastward to the Shield, where worn-down nubs of rock bulge out, unevenly concealed beneath Ontario, and eastward out to Newfoundland, where Brendan might have landed once. I stood there, nothing planned, but hoping for safe passage. Back in Winnipeg that morning, I learned it was St. Brendan's Day, and prayed, perhaps adorning my prayer with vacant words, but still the saints don't misconstrue a call for help. You don't have to believe this, but it's true. And whether grace or luck, sometimes life clicks without a hiccup. I hadn't waited long there on that shoulder when a pickup came swerving up, and written on the side in bright bold letters, the truck said Brendan. Then construction maybe? The subheaders were lost in my astonishment. He welcomed me aboard and drove an hour east with the accelerator floored and firm hands on the tiller, Brendan in a baseball cap. He dropped me off and wished me well, Rides came without a gap from there the whole way home. So tell me, how do you make sense of chance and tide? Some folks just shrug and say coincidence, as if that word alone can tell us why things coincide. Some folks say just don't ever be dependent on a ride. I'm sure that's great advice, but let me tell you something that's greater. Don't set yourself adrift at sea without a navigator. And now this is an excerpt from the Voyage of St. Brendan, which I translated. This passage was first published in New Verse Review. So this is about 2/3 of the way through St. Brendan's voyage across the ocean with a bunch of monks in a skin boat. And things aren't going so well. These holy men set forth, whatever way God's favor fell. Because God's grace was with them, they all traveled very well. One time when they were sailing through a tempest, a prodigious sea creature started chasing them. The thing was huge and hideous. The beast spewed burning foam out from its mouth and nose. Each blast sent reeking spume above the ship, so high it cleared the mast. Ungainly as a house, the monster barreled after them, astonishingly fast, the whole time belching brimstone phlegm. The frightened monks cried to St. Brendan, also to Christ Jesus, "Please bring us help, that monstrous beast is just about to seize us." And when the monks had given up all hope of their survival, another fish swam from the west and smote into his rival with such sea-splitting speed that the foul monster's ghastly carcass was ripped apart. 3 fragments drifted down into the darkness. The fish swerved through the sea and swam back swiftly westward. They gave joyful thanks to Jesus as they watched it swim away. From there, these holy men sailed on the sea so long that hunger set in as their supplies ran out. When they could last no longer, a little bird flew to them very swiftly, bringing them a branch with grapes of perfect redness, bunched on every stem. He brought them to St. Brendan, who received the grapes with laughter. They feasted and had food enough for 14 nights thereafter. But when the grapes were eaten up, their hunger was renewed, until they saw an island where they hoped they might find food. And sure enough, that island swayed with trees so full of grapes that all their branches hung down to the ground like heavy drapes. St. Brendan landed there, and then, with no word of a lie, he filled their ship right up with grapes, a 40-day supply. Soon after that, a monstrous griffin flew across the waves and pounced upon their boat like it would plunge them to their graves. The monks cried out in fear and thought their deaths were all assured. Then something else came flying up. It was the little bird they knew, come from the paradise of birds, straight on a course to intercept the monster. The bird struck it with such force that the griffin flailed back from their vessel, gladdening St. Brendan. The bird in one blow gouged out both the beast's eyes to the tendon. The eyeballs plopped into the sea, soon followed by the griffin. There's nothing that can kill the man whom God wants to keep living. I'm going to read my poem, Continuing City now. This won first prize in the ESU formal verse contest in Australia last year. For us, there's no continuing city. Road construction strips our streets raw summer long, but last year's potholes still seep through. Unload your daydreams here and shuffle on this bus to stiffly jar down Ogilvie. You're wrong to hope these unkept grin lines hum with pity. Expect the bus to skip your stop. For us, that's all there is. We've no continuing city. A high rise will burst bristling from the park you played in as a child. You'll curse each truss that night spans out to frame a ribcage, dark on urban half-light. Sit back. Don't ask whether developers run City Hall. For us, there are no answers. Watch them all shush by. Those half-constructed towers, strung together like scarecrows, skeletal against the sky. The bus jolts you alert, some detours sent you lurching out along the highway. Rest is nowhere here. The rich live high while tent encampments fill the underpasses. Stare out past your blurred reflection. All our best intentions meet a slow death by committee. But gathered through the night just past the glare, wait remnants of the discontinued city. You've reached a new development. The bus drops you and shutters off into the dusk. There's no continuing city, not for us. Rise up through empty floors, the condo of your future's there, atop this new-built husk. Stand by the window, waves of speckled light spill past the bulldozed fields you hang above, and ripple out to meet the walls of night. I'm going to read some poems from my book now. So my book is The Living Law. It was published by Darkly Bright Press in 2024. This poem is called Beneath the Buzzing of My Brainstem. Beneath the buzzing of my brainstem breathes an unseen life, an inner light source, pure and pulsing as the seared shell of a star, unblurred, blossoming, bellowing heat. Beneath my surface stirring swells a silent ocean, as subtle as the tide singing through a seashell, unsounded, unfathomed breadth, shoring this brittle crest of consciousness from crumbling, from crushing its own mass to sand. There's so much I never see while I scamper after some new stimulus, short-circuiting through the swirling shallows, unless my grip is loosened, unless you lessen me. And for a moment of expansive quiet, I feel the fist that holds my heart in its hollow unclench, and unspanned space comes spilling through as my ribcage opens like a flower to the light. This poem is called The Boat Rite. I wrote it for my cousin Christopher, who died in 2022. So this is in memory of Chris. The Boat Rite. My brother, when I saw you lie so still, I thought you must be gone. The man I knew seemed distant on the day we watched you die. When you were here with us, your deft hands couldn't stop creating. Will we ever find a way to fill the stillness that you've left? Will you find something new to make? You've been a carpenter, a chef, an artist with a sailboat if you met wind on the lake. All movement stopped except your pulse, and then your pulse went silent too. I couldn't help but picture you in movement someplace else. You've never had much patience for a problem that you couldn't get your hands on. There are needs unmet on earth. Why look for more? But if you thought that we were quaint for how we talked about our faith, it didn't show. You took it with the patience of a saint. Indulge me one last time. I may know less than... Indulge me one last time. I may know less than you do now, but if there's open water past this life, I know you'll find your way. I see your smile, your sure resolve in facing what's beyond the shore, a new uncharted challenge for your skillful hands to solve. In all that ocean you will be in busy, silent peace, afloat and certain-footed in the boat you're building on the sea. I'm going to read a poem now called Villanelle of the Elect. So Jacob was loved and Esau was hated. It seems like a bit of an uneven deal. You won't stop creating this world you've created. If Esau had hope, it was quickly deflated. The subtle supplanter had him by the heel. But Jacob was loved and Esau was hated. Outside of the city, with heaven ungated and rungs reaching down, Jacob glimpsed what was real. You still were creating this world you'd created. Poor Esau found Jacob's thin soup overrated when robbed of his birthright for one meatless meal. Yet Jacob was loved and Esau was hated. You grappled with Jacob, he grunted and grated while you danced, delighted to meet with such zeal as you kept creating this world you'd created. There's purpose in life, but the path isn't fated. You unspool these urgings we don't even feel. And Jacob was loved and Esau was hated. You keep on creating this world you've created. I'll read a poem now that I wrote for my wife for our 10th anniversary. It's called The Life We Chose. It's nice to share a bed again, even if it's just like this, jammed on this twin mattress in a room our toddlers claimed as his. He lies in a triumphant sprawl with starred-out arms and legs and head. He somehow spreads to smother all the surface of our double bed. But we're just happy he's asleep, and maybe soon we might be too. And crammed right up against your hip, I'm thankful to be next to you. Our other kid's in his own room asleep, but soon, like every night, he'll wake and call for me to come. There's not much I can do but wait. And when he calls, of course I'll go, and once I'm there, I'll probably stay, collapsed, exhausted, though I'll know you're right here, just a room away. So even though I doubt I'll sleep, wedged on this mattress on the floor, this moment's one I want to keep. I'll lie here just a little more. We've made our choices. What we chose is this. We'll see what this can be with time and love. Tomorrow is our 10-year anniversary. Life moves so fast, but it's immense. It's rolled out like a long cascade of choices, sometimes packed so dense we're not quite certain which we've made. But here it's brought us, to our sons and to this hollow, dragging night. Some choices you don't make just once. You choose and then you hold on tight. Is there another life we could have chosen? I don't think I care. How would it do us any good to have a life unlived out there? Each choice is like an off-ramp burned, or like a seed that falls and dies. Some were intended, others weren't, but I won't wish them otherwise. When dawn creeps round our blackout blinds, I'll face it thankful you're my wife. Whatever flaws the fresh day finds, I'll choose and choose and choose this life. A kid's voice whimpers from the dark. You stir. You just begun to doze. The voice fades out and you sink back to sleep. This is the life we chose. And though there's always more to do, as we rush round from task to task, we're raising up an answer to the questions there's no time to ask, like what our life's created of, and what our life's created for. These choices build to form our love. I'll lie here just a little more. And another poem about children not sleeping. This is called Too Much Morning Time, right? And I dedicate it to my sons over there. Inexplicably awake, your small voice seems to fill the night, narrating the undreamt darkness. Buoyant boy, your brain is bright, brimming words and bursting wide, a poet at the age of 3. I can't forget that time you said, there's too much morning time in me, explaining why you once again were waking in a world that slept. This sudden need for passing on the words that rattle in your depth, it's new to you. You don't know yet how silence slowly floods a man. Insomniac child, wide-eyed wordsmith, speak now while you can. I want to read a couple newer poems now. I had 2 poems in the most recent Blue Unicorn magazine, so I'm going to read those. First one's called Adam's Ribs. Let's start again. In time the dusk creaks shut above us, daylight strains and thins. Long cross-hatched shadows seep out of our bared inheritance. Our ancestors sway over us, the giants of renown. Their sifting bulk has left us in this sepulchre of bone. Out there the day breaks hard as bronze, but here each handhold slips, when fumbling dimly up the rungs that remain of Adam's ribs. Our ancestors left hollow husks, their staggered fading forms expand around us in the dusk like inset unlit rooms. Their straining stature let them rise to straighter sight than ours, to see the night as what it is, an unbroken field of stars. We're closed in claustrophobic dark, but spattering starlight drips around the shadowy trestle work of ribs within ribs within ribs. And a poem called Core Sample. My shovel clanks on something hard. This often happens in our yard. I'm lucky to get down a foot into the dirt before I hit on prehistoric rock. We live above it on the slightest skiff of soil spread out across the top. If I could drill down deep to drop past layered sediment, I'd see the place my backyard used to be, when just a patch of ocean floor. There's so much hidden in the core that slow erosion brings to view, while mountains crush and climb up new. My world cross sections at the place I happen to be standing. Space and time meet here, right at this crux. I'll dig and haul away the rocks until my shovel biting clear, uncovers what's been hidden here, the unsound crust, the upturned curse, and underfoot, a universe. And a poem from the new Forma magazine. They changed the ending of this poem when they printed it in a way that I don't love, so I'm going to try to change it back on the fly. We'll see how that goes. This is called The Blessing of the Waters. The waters wander overland, thin rivulets weave into others to form a stream. The fallow sand folds to its path. It can't withstand the blessing of the waters. Here's how it starts. A dry voice groans across the wasted crags and musters a trickle from the shattered stones. Hear how the wilderness intones the blessing of the waters. Far off are the shriveled seabeds filled with murky froth. The runoff gathers in pits and gullies. Bright streams spill. Sorry, are we okay with the sound system? Okay. Testing, testing. It's okay.
There might be a connection here. Sorry, I lost this connection. Can you try
Yeah,
again?
testing. Testing. That sounds better.
I think there's maybe some connection.
Yeah, don't touch it. Thanks a lot. Can you all hear me still? Okay. Start that one again. The blessing of the waters. The waters wander overland, thin rivulets weave into others to form a stream. The fallow sand folds to its path. It can't withstand the blessing of the waters. Here's how it starts. A dry voice groans across the wasted crags and musters a trickle from the shattered stones. Hear how the wilderness intones the blessing of the waters. Far off are the shriveled seabeds filled with murky froth. The runoff gathers in pits and gullies. Bright streams spill toward them, bearing down the hill the blessing of the waters. The stagnant depths churn up and thresh the surface as their essence alters. The brackish breakers flashing fresh, receiving four-wind withered flesh, the blessing of the waters. Dry-throated traveler, that gleam that skirts the sky is all that matters. You'll crest the final slope. You'll seem to see, as in a waking dream, the blessing of the waters. And one more from my book. This is called Lightning Strikes Churches. It won third prize in the Kierkegaard Poetry Competition in 2023. It was inspired by a passage from Kierkegaard in which he said basically, it's no wonder lightning strikes churches. So, I don't know, like, watch out. Lightning strikes churches. A church is a makeshifted shelter, a lean-to thrown up against heaven, a wobbly but warm enclosure that all the unready rush into before the sharp edge of the storm. When lightning strikes churches, the pigeons know why. They burst from their perches and soar in the churchyard's blank sky. A church is a fistful of feelings, its steeple a finger unflinchingly jabbing at clouds, enclosing the longing the righteous can keep all their rightness unreached by the crowds. When lightning strikes churches, it feels out our worth. Then finding no purchase, it dissipates into the earth. A church is a monument, far out of fashion, that clings to the crumbling brink of the land, a ritual built between Isaac's cold question and Abraham's trembling hand. When lightning strikes churches, it surges with light and restlessly searches for faith formed unbent in the night. A church is a boat with a broad bow to carry the last lines of life through the world-wasting flood, a gunwale-thin wall between us and the fury that's frothing and foaming our blood. When lightning strikes churches, it shudders our core, The ship leaps and lurches, then leans to the unsighted shore. That's all.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Sorry about the sound problems there. We now welcome Don Martin. This is the third book Don's launched at St. Thomas's. The preceding two were an anthology, The Turning Aside in 2017, and his book Angelicus in 2022. The title of the new one is The Role of the Moon, just published. And he's, of course, been published widely in numerous periodicals, and he's also the series editor for the Poema Poetry series from Cascade Books, where he has edited more than 50 poetry collections and several anthologies. So Don is kept very busy, and he continues to keep busy, and we welcome him to read from his new book today. Thanks, Don.
Thank you, David. I am indeed honored to be here. I've been to many events here that I participated in and those I've just come to enjoy because of the other wonderful readers. I'm just pleased to be with you here today, and through the generous efforts of David Kent and through the generosity of St. Thomas's Church to make the event possible. I'm also delighted that Jesse Keith Butler was our opening reader and to share his fine poetry with us. The book I'm launching is called The Role of the Moon. It's a collection of poems that owes much to the fine 17th century poets known as the Metaphysicals: George Herbert, John Donne, Thomas Traherne, Henry Vaughan, Andrew Marvell, and I could mention others. And then also to other poets who used the metaphysical technique of using metaphors, extended metaphors, in a way that wrestle very much with their own shortcomings and with their dependence on God. People like Emily Dickinson, Gerard Manley Hopkins, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and even William Shakespeare. For those of you who are well acquainted with these poets, I think you'll find delight in the little connections to their work. However, I want to also say that you don't need to be familiar with their work in order to enter into these poems. I particularly focused in on John Donne, for he has written 19 poems called the Holy Sonnets, and I, in response, wrote 19 poems, one connected to each of his holy sonnets, not to try to update his poem or to take it and put it in modern language or anything like that, more like a conversation, with what goes on in my life that kind of paralleled what was going on in his, not always the same. Otherwise, I think every one of my poems would have been about death. But a fascinating poet who was a significant Anglican priest at St. Paul's in London. So, for example, the title poem of this collection, The Role of the Moon. In this poem, I'm imagining myself, let's say in a stage play, and I'm playing the part of a stone. And God is playing the role of the moon. Now, that's not an analogy that comes from Donne, but it's there are some connections in the language I use to some of the things that he said. Anyway, this poem is called The Role of the Moon. And it's subtitled Metaphysicals 9. I play the part of an earthbound stone, you the role of the moon, in this silent, ceaseless standoff. As a rock, an oversized pebble, I'm kicked along some city sidewalk, rolling into a ditch, from which I see the curve of your shoulder, turned away, high beyond wispy clouds. If I could be a monument or a stone floor where bent knees bleed, might I gain your notice? If I were bolder, I'd cry out, complain of your inattention. Yet who am I to dispute? You know me as well as you knew the hand reaching for the fruit. If I were a mountain or a craggy coast, would you command me to fall into the sea? Could I dare pray with your face full on me? Your distance is just a pose, mine a fallacy. I think it mercy that you feign to turn away. I'll share with you one now that's inspired by Hopkins, or in conversation with Hopkins, or connected some way or other with Hopkins. It is called Curved Beauty. The seeds of geometry, as seen through flowers and hives, through webs and shells, suggest possibilities beyond themselves, almost made manifest. For the perfectly straight infinite line described by Mr. Singh in math class doesn't exist. Even a sunbeam starts with the sun and either fades or is broken, and what seems straight admits variance. The horizon line, the shaft of a feather, the bowing branch, the bending river, none of which goes on forever. Glory be to God for the dance of willows in the wind, the swerve and swoop of swallows in flight, the arc of a crescent moon, the curve of a tusk, the crook in a brook, the undulations in sand dunes, the refractions and reflections of light. Before I go any further, I really must digress, for today is November 22nd. And it's not only the 62nd anniversary of the assassination of JFK, it is the 62nd anniversary of the death of one of my greatest influences, and that is C.S. Lewis. My second poetry collection is called Conspiracy of Light, a book that was made up entirely of poems inspired by Lewis from his life, from his writings. So I really need to acknowledge that date today. The poem I'm going to read for you is called The Sacred Fish. And it begins with an image Lewis created in his book, Reflections on the Psalms. And I take his image and I kind of run with it and expand the metaphor, very much like a metaphysical poet expanded metaphors. This is called The Sacred Fish. You can't desire to catch the sacred fish as much as he desires to be caught. And yet he darts through the dim depths with tail swerve and swish, laughs with the joy of glistening fins at huge holes in your net through which he swims. To get the shining coin from his mouth is worth selling all you have. To get him, even better. Everything you know about him wavers in uneven light. Just below the surface, so it's barely wet, you let down your net as he dives to the bottom. You seek the depths as he leaps through waves. You search the shallows as he heads for open water. And your tattered nets come up empty. If you let him, he'll repair them himself. Trim knotted clumps and untie tangles. Selecting the right fibers, he'll tear and twist the sinews of your heart into fine mesh. Stretch them as thin as a pin, as wide as your whole being, a needle shimmer piercing your soul. Better is one day in his boats than thousands elsewhere. It's, the next one I'm going to read for you was actually won a poetry contest down in the States for a publication called Fair Forward back in 2022. This one is called Two Types of Ibex. And it is a little credit with thanks to David Attenborough and the BBC. If you enjoy watching those nature shows, you'll maybe catch a little bit of this sort of image. Anyway, two types of ibex. There are those who believe in resurrection and those who don't. People, that is. I'm talking about people. And those rodeo cowgirls in cliche clothes untangling lassos of their own. They lift their eyes toward mountains. Where might their help come from? It's unthinkable to think of the Athabasca Glacier dripping down to nothing, though all it needs for rebirth is a new ice age. Hard to imagine the Egyptians, Incas, and Inuit inventing the same proofless premise. It's like the instinct newborn ibex get of how to bound along sheer slopes and how they know the pretty red fox is not their friend. There are two types of ibex, those who thirst for the water 1,000 feet down and those already drinking. I was thinking how it's rather funny that we almost forget that the COVID-19 pandemic happened. I mean, it's not that long ago. I mean, there was a time when we measured our lives as pre-COVID and post-COVID. But I think we're slipping into that, at least I am, into that time of, what was that? It's as if we sort of skipped over it, right? And we pretend it didn't exist. Anyway, this poem I'm going to read for you is my one COVID poem, the one I wrote to try to get at some of what was happening then. It's called Poem for a Time of Crisis. What is that small feathered thing, meek and knowing, that survived in cramped quarters with all that would soon be released upon us? Pardon me. Without fear, she lets me reach deep into her now lidless box, lift her in my hand and feel her gentle heart thrumming. Is she kin to the dove Noah released from his window? Or the first robin of spring? Those who have come through storms will recognize her plumage. Like to the lark at break of day, she'll sing. We have not been left alone. Her belief merges with mine as I fling her skyward and watch her take wing, knowing she'll return with an olive leaf. This one is called Ruins Remind Us. What we do rarely stays done. Not just laundry and dishes and the trimming of trees. Rembrandts require restoration. Castle ramparts crumble, and scaffolds arise along cathedral walls. Remnants of Lamennais and Tintern Abbey's ruins remind us nothing remains forever. Even the sharp edges of Donne's poems are weathered by years of linguistic shift in how our ears receive them. Along the Grand Canal, they hide the repairs in progress behind clever screens. What we do rarely stays done. Even our love will need continual renewal to keep our precious ones warm after we're gone. The Irish poet Patrick Kavanagh wrote a poem called Come Dance with Kitty Stobling, which was influenced by an earlier poem by William Butler Yeats. And although I really have no idea who Kitty Stobling was, despite all my attempted research, I couldn't resist joining the conversation. So I knew it was my turn to pick up where Kavanagh left off, as it were. This poem actually appeared in the Irish Times. It's called Kitty Stobling Dances On. Who can discern what makes her take the chance, stilt walking precariously on a downtown street, a dance to catch the eye of passers-by, each upturned face gawking questioningly? They stop mid-step, surprised by her performance, a wonder, a conundrum, a curiosity. Is her love of unexpected grace in the theatrical what leaves her risking absurdity? Of these flat-footed rationalists, not one believes her. Come dance with Kitty Stobling and dance with me. on mile-high stilts, half hidden by clouds, a high-flying myth to help us all see. The rogues of the world mock all that's beyond them. I'm mainly an observer, not smooth on my feet, but I dance in mid-air where beauty walks waiting, and the love of God stirs like wind in the wheat. Whirling and swirling behind storm-formed clouds, graceful troops dance with Kitty in all the tall trees, high above the timorous faces of the crowd who never bother with our identities. I have been very influenced by Irish poets. I don't know what it is about the Irish that just, their love of language, it just has produced so many incredible poets. In his Nobel Prize acceptance speech, Seamus Heaney told a story about something that had happened in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. And I researched that story a little bit further, and this poem, which is written in blank verse, is the result. It's called County Armagh, 1976. In January, early comes the dark. Earlier still amid midwinter rain. Now that our textile factory shift is through, 16 of us cram in for the ride home. We talk of teams, the minibus rolls out. Competing football loyalties support various clubs, and still we're mates. We stop and forget out in the darkness. Soon our talk turns to what happened here yesterday. 6 Catholics shot dead, 3 here in Whitecross. Though I'm the only Catholic in the van, as Moen Road jostles us side to side, I feel no awkwardness as we discuss. We all agree the troubles trouble us. Ahead, a red lamp swings to signal stop. We're not surprised. Security's grown tight. But as we stop, my stomach starts to lurch. The armed men in the rain have faces hid. We're ordered out, lined up along the road. The one of you who's Catholic, step out here. The men on either side, they squeeze my hands, as if to say, we'll not betray you, mate. But still the leader figures I'm that one. I step out trembling, fearing for my life. Get down the road, he barks, and don't look back. In black confusion, I begin to run, and run blindly, stumbling down the road as automatic rifle blasts explode. I turn to see the bodies on the ground. The gunmen reload for a second round. This one is called Bird Watching with Confucius. The beginning of wisdom, Confucius said, is to call things by their proper name. And so, as I watched the feeder, I learned to discern sparrows from finches, amid their flickering and bickering and scattering of seed, and by this seek to sound wiser, if only to myself. But perhaps there's confusion, and he really meant the beginning of knowledge, for the plumage of words overlaps and ruffles with flap and vibrato. As I observe circling birds, the black-capped chickadee and dark-eyed junco, whose need for feed I've heard is met by God and kind retirees, I hope to find the beginning of wisdom through such things. A bird doesn't fear her branch breaking, Confucius said, because she trusts in her wings. Although none of those 19 metaphysical poems, or as I call them anyway, that I wrote, none of them are sonnets, although Donne's original poems were sonnets. I have several sonnets in the collection, and I thought I would share a couple of those with you now. This first one is called Peregrine Falcon, and it begins with a little quote. Sorry to say. Begins with a little quote from Ben Jonson. Now thou but stoops to me. Peregrine Falcon, Sonnet 10. The falcon like a teardrop, heaven cries, from higher than the city's tallest tower, designed to fall precisely through clear skies, now hurtles at 200 miles per hour. At such a speed, what keeps her flashing eyes from drying out, her lungs from ripping open? She's been made fast, but pigeons were made wise, at least enough to dodge a diving falcon. But you, O Lord, are like a bird of prey, whose talons I would not try to resist. When caught, I will not try to get away. When held by you, I'll pray that you'll persist. Oh, hold me, Lord, while I am here below. Then lift me up, for I'll be glad to go. And I also have a series of 3 sonnets I wrote a while ago for Christmas. And since we're coming into Advent, I'll read the first of those. It is called Shepherd, Sonnet 5. On clear, cold nights when far stars speckle skies, and wood smoke goes straight up and disappears, a dozen constellations to my eyes are dull blurs when I think back through the years, to when the angels spoke to us that night, joined by the brilliant, vast angelic choir, which overcame our senses with such light and planted in each man the same desire, that prodded us till we reached Bethlehem and led us to an unmarked cattle shed. We stumbled in and startled both of them, those parents, by the baby's manger bed. The townfolk were astounded by our story of uncouth shepherds blessed to see God's glory. I'll now return to my metaphysicals, as I call them. And if you're a fan of John Donne, you might find the opening of this poem sounds a little bit familiar. It is called Love Like an Ocean, Metaphysicals 14. Batter my boat, widespread water. Make your breakers shake my hull and threaten to capsize me. Push my bow and blow me back. Attack me broadside with your whipping wind. Bend my ambivalence into passion. Mend my apathy so my heart is full. And don't let me defend my indefensible complacency. Through foolish reason, knock me overboard into depths too great for me, so I am so thrown upon your mercy that as you drag me, my drenched form, onto your rocky beach, I will know that you are good. Of the poems I've shared with you this afternoon, those that present an extended metaphor are most like those that the metaphysical poets wrote back in the 17th century. And that's especially true when you think about the spiritual lives of those people such as George Herbert and John Donne and Thomas Traherne. I see myself as part of a movement of poets who are, rather than imitating the past, are reestablishing spiritual depth in poetry, following in the footsteps of the metaphysical tradition. I'm going to read one last poem for you today, and it's an extended metaphor I've written about a map and what a map does, and it's simply called Line and Color. Line and color. The first map you saw was mere line and color, before you knew to multiply it out into a world, before a blue curl could be a river and a straight thread your street. You gradually heard 3 little squares declare themselves houses, and 3 little trees go further and suggest a whole forest, and the forest to suggest the wild, where lines lost and overgrown no longer meet, where things you cannot own never lie down confined to a legend, and the mysteries of darkness and light remain unknown, where those trees, those same little trees, rise high above 2-dimensional paper to be blown in the uncharted wind, just as we will be shown how the landscape too, in all its line and color, reveals far more than itself. Thank you.
thank you to Jesse and Dawn for sharing those wonderful poems, and you all have an opportunity to come into the reception and buy books that both of them have authored, and many of those poems are in there. So I invite you to go through this door here, and down some stairs, and then through another door, and then up into the parish hall where there's refreshments. And I thank you again for coming, and hope to see you in the hall shortly. Thank you.